Hello and welcome in to Around the Ice on Fantasy in Frames. I'm your host, JT. Alongside me, Brian Toast Clark, Aaron Tomatich, getting things going tonight. Doing something a little bit different here in the offseason. We've kind of been jumping around. We did a mock draft. We've kind of been talking rookie draft strategy. Now we're getting here later in the year. Talk about overall draft strategy, or Dynasty, going through that. That's kind of what we're going to focus on tonight here. Just a little bit of roundtable. If you got any questions, feel free to jump into the chat, hit us up, let us know. If you got questions about players or formats or commissioning, what you do in a league, me and Toast commission a couple leagues. So feel free to jump in, ask any of that kind of questions. This is going to be more of a free-flowing episode where we don't have a lot just scripted out, but we're just going to kind of jump in and talk about a variety of things. Before we get going, Toast, how things going with you? It's August, man. It's crazy. It feels like it's too early to be here. I'm in football practice with my son, Walker. Been 3 weeks, game one, a couple days away on Saturday, so it's going to be interesting. I know you've been getting the kids ready for school. What else is going on with you?
Yeah, I got my son. He's going to be a freshman coming up at SIU, Carbondale, pole vaulter. So he's going to be going to college next week. My daughter's going to be a junior at Illinois State. She's in a nursing program. She's going to school next week as well. And then my youngest daughter, who is the most I guess she's the most social out of all of them, basically never home, always doing stuff with friends or sports and that kind of stuff. So me and my wife just sit here and basically like we're already empty nesters. I'm 49 years old. She's 46 and basically nobody's ever home here. So more time for me to actually, besides work, to prepare for fantasy hockey, get ready for the season. I don't give a damn about football right now. I don't care. This is really all I care about. And it's going to show once I actually draft on my football teams. They're going to be awful. And they were awful last year. I'll probably be awful again because I'm putting all my eggs in this basket for fantasy hockey.
That's fantastic. That's what we like to hear. The dedication out of Toast here at Fantasy Hockey and Fantasy and Frames. Aaron Titch, what's going on with you, man? How are you doing?
Oh, great summer so far. Like you said, JT, kind of wrapping up here, getting the kids ready to school for school. My two, one in high school, one in middle school, so a little different. They've not quite, they're here probably a little bit more. Can't call myself an empty nester yet, but yeah, we're gearing up towards that school. But like Toast said, I mean, and I've taken it a step further now. Toast, I've pretty well, not because I was really good. Obviously, if I was top game and I was a source of income was fantasy football, no, I would get just destroyed year after year. So I walked away from it quite a while ago. So I just go to a hockey fantasy now. That's completely taken over. It's a sport I grew up watching, loved it, played it, all that good stuff. So I've kind of stayed close to it. But yeah, about 60. I think if there's a countdown I'm on with Twitter or the X or whatever you call it, I think we're 63 days now. As I say that, I didn't check the day today, but yeah, we're right at that now. We're kind of getting towards that. Once it gets to 30, then it feels real. So can't wait. It can't come soon enough. Can't wait for October.
Yeah, things moving right along. Obviously, the summer, if you're a fantasy football fan, and a lot of the people here on Fantasy and Frames follow us for all our football content, Dynasty season, whenever the calendar is slip into August, everybody considers that redraft season. So now we're starting to do redraft content, getting all over that. We've been doing a little bit of Dynasty, a little bit of redraft. We're going to talk both of those tonight here for hockey. I always feel like my August is all redraft leagues, all the leagues I've been in forever, ever, and ever, or some of our home leagues. Toast is one of the home leagues with me. Some of those ones we do. And then I feel like September, it's like, ooh, I'm in football, but now I'm like, here's all the hockey coming out. I've got all the football drafts out of the way. Football's starting. Now it's hockey draft season. So we're going to get you prepared here early on in case you have an early draft. First off, guys, bunch of different formats, redraft, keeper, dynasty, categories. How do you best prepare for a draft? And is it different? I'll start with you, Toast. Is it different depending on what type of league you are in? Is your strategy going in how you prepare for the draft different, or do you prepare for all the drafts the same way?
No, you definitely prepare different. And so it really depends on the scoring and the overall format of the league. So you may be head to head, you may be categories, you may be dynasty, you may be cap league, you may be keepers, redraft, you name it. I mean, there's depending on whether you have 8 team in your leagues or 18 teams. We have 18 teams in one of our leagues. And so there's just a bunch of different ways to prepare for a draft. But I would say if you're looking for just some basic advice on how to keep it simple, right? How do you best prepare for a draft? Understand the scoring format and understand how many starters and how many bench you actually have. That scoring is actually huge, right? So it varies. Like our home league is a bangers league. There's a big emphasis on hits and blocks. And you better understand specifically how that brings up the value of some defensemen in relationship to those forwards that actually don't hit, but they may just put the puck in the back of the net. That's a big deal. So definitely understand your scoring format. But really, what I do as well, once I had the scoring format down, I really like to tier my players and put them in tiers similar to what fantasy football does or your other fantasy games you actually play. Tiering the players based on their position. You may tier all the forwards together. You may actually tier the goalies and tier the defensemen, or you may tier the forwards based on position, depending on the league settings, right? If it's specific to wing, left wing, right wing, or center, you're going to have to tier them that way as well. We're going to get into some of that here as well on basically how do you prepare for that type of draft. But I do always want to actually understand the scoring and really have a tier in place where I'm going 7, 8 tiers for each one of my positions. So that way I can at least know where my value's at.
How about you, Aaron? What kind are you looking at when you go back and forth on these different drafts that you're in?
Yeah, I mean to really piggyback off the tiering system, I do the exact same thing. So again, to keep it simple, I go to that tiering system. What I do a little bit differently, or what I do when I get to that tiering system. So, I mean, anybody can put a tier one, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, you name it, big name, top 10 pick, Draisaitl, whatever. Well, anybody can say, it's a tier one guy. Pretty obvious why, but really where you make your money is going to be like the tier 3 to tier 6. So what I'll do is I'll tear them all out just as Toast laid it out. Again, and the tiers are based on your rules. So again, starting from square one, what are the rules? How does the league score? Now I've got my tiers. Now how do I rank those players in those tiers? Because then they get assigned. I may have some tiers that have 8 players in it. I may have tier 1 that has 3 tier 1 players. I don't know. It just depends. But it's important that I rank those because at some point I'm going to have to make a decision. Which tier 6 guy do I want here? There may be a difference. And the way I do that is kind of come up with a heat index. What a heat index is I've assigned a certain percentage. So what I'll do is I look, so a straight up redraft, goals, assists, your basic scoring. I'll add up those points plus the shots taken. So shots that hit the goalie, not that missed the net. None of the fancy stuff, none of the deep dive, Corsi or Fenwick, none of that. I love those stats, but I don't do it for this. But I'll enter that in with shots taken. I'll add a multiplier for power play time on ice. So there's an average you can get like per game. A player sees 2.5 minutes on the power play time. That might mean he's a line 1, it might mean he's line 2. Just depends on what it is. I add that as a multiplier, and then I add what line he's on as the second multiplier. So if he's line 1, he gets a 4 times whatever the number is. That gives me a heat index, and I break it down off 3 prior years. So it's hard to do. It doesn't apply to rookies, and that's what we talked about it last week, JT. We were talking about here's some impact rookies. Different tiering system there. Like these are guys that'll probably make an impact. These are guys I would draft in a redraft. These are guys that I would draft in a dynasty and just sit and wait, like we talked about last week. But what I'll try to do with NHL talent guys, all I care about is the last 3 years. What have you done? Are you on the upswing? Are you on the downswing of a long career? That's how I break down the tiering system from there. You can do this with Excel. You can find a YouTube. You can find I don't know, there's a million things you can do with that. And they're not obviously not a sponsor of the show, but that's what I use as my primary way to just type it in. It's just the numbers, and then I'll have my rank, and that's what I'll use to go to a draft, or if I'm online, that's what fills my queue, is exactly the prep time. I go about 200, 250 players deep. I got a lot of spare time, so it'll take you a while, but it's fun to do at the end of the day. It's kind of fun to sit there and do that, and then sometimes it works and you look great, and sometimes somebody blows out a knee and you look like an idiot. But you control what you can control.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on that stuff. Look, what about statistics? Is there different statistics you guys emphasize depending on the format? Is there one, like, regardless of format you're in, you're like, this is one of the ones I'm putting at the top of the board. This is a stat I'm looking at, no matter what type of league I'm in? And then is there other ones you're looking at, like, okay, this is bigger for me in a cats league, or this is bigger for me in a head-to-head, just straight out scoring league? Toast, what do you think about that? What are some statistics that you look at and things that are important to you depending on what league you're in?
Yeah, more simplification, JT. Again, what's the idea of hockey in a nutshell? Like any other sport, the idea is a score. And in order to score, you got to be on the ice. And in order to actually be also on ice, you got to be able to shoot the puck. I mean, so I simplify that to the nth degree. It'd be no different in football, saying number of offensive plays, number of carries, number of targets, and number, I guess, and the time on how long you actually had the football, right? So it's very similar. So for me, regardless of format, whether it's any scoring format at all, and whether it's head-to-head or cats league, I put a premium on shots on goal. And I also actually look at time on ice, even though it's not measured as something we would actually do in a category league. They need to be on ice a lot. They need to be power play one. They need to be line one. And they actually need to shoot the puck. If I can get guys like that and then they do a little bit of other things to balance them out, that's the guys I actually want. But I'm not starting at goals scored last year. I'm not starting at assists last year. I'm not starting at hits and blocks that are premium here. I'm looking, are they on the ice all the time when it actually matters? And maybe who are they playing with, right? But for the most part, do they shoot the puck? And I want a lot of those guys.
What about you, Aaron?
Yeah. Again, I primarily what I do is not I put a premium on time on ice, like Toast just said. That's my number one category. Time on ice usually equates to line one. And for those maybe newer to the sport, or those that have watched the sport as long as I have for 40 odd years, a typical hockey strategy, line one and line two are scoring lines. Now, this is when you're at home. Line one and line two are your scorers. Line three is your shutdown line. Line four is just eats minutes. They eat minutes. They kind of keep the status quo. So I do
Check
get
line.
A little bit.
Yeah,
exactly. So they just, you see line one go out, I'm going to put my bruisers out. These are guys that they may not possess the puck a lot, but they know how to keep the puck out of our zone. They know how to maybe stick to a guy. They know our defensive scheme a little bit better than my scorers do. My Artemi Panarins that just run north, south, north, south, north, south. I want to get that guy moving towards the other blue line or towards the neutral zone, and then lob a puck up to him and let him run in and get a shot on goal, or hopefully keep some puck possession down low. So I look at that time on ice. I supplement that with possession time or offensive time. You can again, all this stuff you can find. Everything's online. You can find all this, but that puck possession time where you're in the offensive time in the zone. Time on ice usually equates to that line or one line or line two. Those are your lines that are out there most. But there's only 45 seconds in a modern day NHL shift, and there's only 45 seconds of energy these guys burn. If they don't have the puck in that 45 seconds, they're burning it on the back check. They don't have anything left. They don't have any gas in the tank left to go and attack. It takes a lot more energy to attack as opposed to play defense. I guess you could argue that, but it's a lot harder to do that and maintain that possession. I want my line 1 and line 2 to have that puck and use their 45 seconds in the offensive zone. So I look at a lot of home and away as well. Home, you get the last line change. Away, you put out what you're going to put out, and then home can react to it. So some of that plays in. Now it's when you go into a season, you're going to have a 41 and 41. You get half as many games at home. It doesn't mean as much when you first drop the puck, but as the season goes on, who's got the home stretch, who doesn't, that kind of goes into who I'm gonna play or who I'm gonna draft. Is do I offset this with that? Just looking at all that, but pretty much short answer would be time on ice for sure.
Yeah, and JT, I want to add something as well, if I could. We talk about what the main statistics are that are really, really important. Again, league scoring. League scoring does actually play into that. But again, this is what we're actually telling everybody if everything's equal, right? Regardless of the format. I want to point out something. So we're going into our home league where we actually played really a big emphasis on hits, blocks, PEMs, right? And we also give some benefit for shots on goal as well. Here is and let's just mention tiers right now. Okay, just real quick, I want to mention something. I want to talk about tiers. There's 8 players that are actually in tier 1 on the projection for season points coming up here. Austin Matthews, David Pastrnak, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Nikita Kucherov, right? No surprises there, really, right? And ours is an ultra banger league, so no surprises. There's 2 surprises. One, not so much Kirill Kaprizov, but you got Brady Tkachuk, right? And Brady Tkachuk is a product of our system where if you go look at Dauber's top 300 keeper league skaters, Brady Tkachuk's 38th. But in our league, he's a top 5 player, right? So you really got to understand your scoring format, look at some projections, see kind of how they're projecting based on your format. You can even use apps like Left Wing Lock and even Daily Faceoff, especially Left Wing Lock. You can actually go in and purchase a draft kit for like $15. You can upload all of your draft or your scoring in your league, and then it'll output basically the projections that Left Wing Lock sees. And Dauber does something similar as well. So there's a lot of sites out there where you can use if you really don't want to go by your league and what everybody else is seeing, especially in first-time drafts, right, where you don't have anything to go by because you've actually never had the league. So definitely check out those sites if you want to get up on some of the competitors in your league.
I got a quick question for you guys. What about shot percentage? How much do you look into shot percentage? Are you way more concerned about shots on goal per season as opposed to shot percentage? We always hear about, like, for football and some other sports, like, hey, touchdowns are year to year. Sometimes it's just by chance it happens. You can't predict how many touchdowns you're going to get. Obviously, goals in hockey are a little easier because you kind of know what guys kind of do. Are you guys going more off a shooting percentage, or you're saying, hey, that guy just had a hot year, a hot streak? I care more about that they're actually getting shots on goal than what the percentage actually is last year or what the prediction is for this upcoming season.
Aaron, you want to take that one, or you want me to tackle it?
Yeah, Aaron. You want to jump in, Aaron. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No. Yes. I mean, again, short answer here, yes. And what I do is the shot percentage actually steers me away from some of the players. So if you got somebody that came out, I typically look at that. Well, okay. Well, what does that mean? I mean, if he's close to 20%, my cutoff is 19.5%. It's pretty high shooting percentage for the NHL. Modern day NHL is probably anywhere from 11% to 14, 15%. Not all your shots are going in. They're hitting the goalie. Goalies have these giant pads. Goalies are 6'7". They're huge. A lot of the net is covered. So the percentages over the course of the NHL has gone down, but that's about your league average. But yeah, so if I see somebody that has that, I automatically kind of put them in. You're only going to come off and go to a regression. So yes, shooting percentage is very important as opposed to shots on goals.
Yeah, no, like I said, just to make that clear for the audience, you're saying, hey, if you're up over that 19.5%, I'm a little nervous about you because I don't know if you can basically replicate that next year because you were such a high percentage that to you, that's a little bit of a red flag. If the percentage is too high, that person's probably going to drop a little in your rankings. Is that correct?
Yeah, and just it's at least going to flag it. Now it's not going to be like, an Ovechkin that, he's the number one scorer of all time, and that's all he does is shoot from the Ovi spot. There are going to be exceptions to that rule, but generally speaking, that is going to scream red flag if somebody's shooting at that 20% or higher mark. Very, very tough to repeat those results.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add there as well, JT, is look at trending. Look at what that player's actually done over their career. If they happen to shoot, like Aaron was saying, 18.5%, like, well, it's high. But what if they've actually averaged 17.5% over the last 4 years on that team? And that's mainly when they started playing with another superstar, right? On the same line. Then you're like, okay, this is sustainable. This is what they are now. We're going to go ahead and do that. Like, for example, Nathan McKinnon, 320 shots on goal last year. That's low for him, considering the previous year was 405. The previous year after that was 366, then 300, then 318, and 365. He shot 10% last year. 10% for a winger, or I'm sorry, for a center, it's kind of low. And he's a 10% career total shooter on a shot percentage, but he shoots so freaking much where it doesn't really matter if he shoots 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%. It's all going to average out because he just shoots the puck so much. So, but what you're looking for is that guy that came in and basically his shots on goal didn't go up. He's got the same deployment on the same team. He's got the same line mates as he actually before. And he's actually averaged 12% on the career. And then last year he shot 21% out of the blue. Then those are the ones you go back, okay, like, and then to boot.
That's like if he falls to me, okay, I'm taking him, but I'm not going to overdraft that guy because he shot through the roof last season. Correct?
JT, it'd be no different than Raheem Mostert actually scoring 20-some touchdowns for Miami a couple years ago, right? Like, he had 20 touchdowns, something like that.
Yeah, he had like, he was like tied for the league in touchdowns, and everybody's like, he's not gonna do that again, right? So you weren't drafting him as a first or second round running back, assuming he was gonna get 20 touchdowns again. You're like, okay, real nice season, but I'm still gonna take him in the 14th round.
Yeah,
and you're saying the same thing on hockey players, like, hey, just because the guy, hey, let somebody else in your league overdraft that guy that played double. Had double the shooting percentage he's ever had in his career last year. If he falls to you, great, take him. But, like, don't overdraft those guys that shot crazy high percentages last season.
Absolutely. I can name a couple here, but I won't because I just bore everybody to death. But they're out there, man, and you should actually have them circled. Go to hockey-reference.com. Just look at last year's. I mean, and it's the best one, right? And you can go look at it, all the shooting percentage. Hey, Braden Point shot 22.2% last year. Wait, why don't I mind that much? Because Braden Point's on a high octane offense. He's always had the ability to score 40 goals every year. I'm not scared by the 22.2%. I'm not. He led the league. It's fine.
Exception to the rule. Yep.
Exception to the rule, right? Now, hey, Josh Norris, on the other hand, 21.9%. He could never stay healthy. Only played 56 games. That's about what Norris kind of does. And he's a hell of a talent. 21 goals. And he actually only had 96 shots on goal and 178 attempts. So 21.9, you better be in the right format if you're going to draft Josh Norris in the top 5 rounds, right? It better be the right format. Our format may be the right format, right? So because he hits a lot and everything else. He hit 135 hits, 47 blocks, and he'll get some PIMs there as well. So, yeah, we could beat this with a dead horse. I love talking about this, though, with the statistics, because we could go on and on. We could have a whole show on this question here. What statistics do we emphasize? Because it matters a great deal.
Yeah, we could jump back into that if we get the opportunity arises. But, Toast, you brought it up. This is, I think, is always a really interesting thing to talk about when you talk about hockey. And I think it's interesting when you talk about football or other fantasy sports as well, is what is the hardest format to play in? And then what formats do you like? And do you like playing in multiple formats because you, for the variety or whatever challenge or whatever other reason? Tell us, I'll let you start with this one. Talk about like kind of what you think are the most challenging formats, and then the type of formats you like to play in, and why you like to play in those formats. In case there's anybody out there listening who's, pretty new, or like, hey, I played in one home fantasy league, redraft league for like 5 years, but I've never really like maybe expanded beyond there. And if I want to, what do I want to do, or what do I need to be looking for, and why do you like that type of format, and why should other people consider playing that type of format?
So JT, let's maybe parlay this question with a question we're going to ask at the very end, right? So let's maybe parlay those together, because I think I like your question is talk about the hardest ones and then the ones we suggest that maybe new commissioners and new players maybe seek out. But like
Absolutely.
most fantasy games, regardless of sport, man, and JT, you can attest to this. When it comes down first, before format and actually before scoring and all that stuff, if your draft's an auction draft, you better know what the hell you're doing. They're difficult. They're really, really difficult. And you better understand the tendencies of the league mates and stuff, because from a draft perspective, the auction is the absolute most difficult. I've only done like auction for basketball.
So I'm going to say I'm going to 100% back you up on that. And the biggest issue, and this is not just a hockey question. This is if you're in basketball, baseball, football, anything. Auction, I think, is by far the hardest, because you don't necessarily know what all your team, like all your league mates are going to do. And then you also don't know what's going to happen when people start getting desperate. So when people miss out on guys they think they might get, then you see people start going for way more than you thought they were going to go for. You are waiting on a guy and you're like, whoa, I don't have that money. You have to be on your toes in an auction draft more than any other league. You have to be paying attention, on your toes. You have to have a huge queue set and have to have a general idea of what you're going to pay for a guy, because it can go off the rails so quickly. I've been in so drafts, I was like, where I've like got done and I'm like, man, I just freaking murdered that draft, because I got all the guys, I got them all cheap, everything works, and I've been other ones like, man, I butchered that. That was really bad. Like I took 2 guys for way too much early on. I sat around with no money forever, and then I was just picking up scraps at the end. So to me, and to go with your point, Toast, I think it's just the most unpredictable, right? There's no way to expect what everybody in your league is going to spend. And not only what they're going to spend or do, but what happens when someone gets desperate. What happens if you're in a position league in hockey, and all of a sudden right wings start getting real low. And all of a sudden, what do you know? Somebody's going to spin through the roof for a guy that are spending double what you thought anybody would pay for. You're like, what is going on? But then all of a sudden they're like, everybody's getting nervous. They're starting to get real low on the amount of guys left. Those are, I think, and Aaron, I'll throw it to you too, and then let Toast get back to his point. But isn't auction just the hardest? Because it just, things change on a dime, a split second. One guy goes for way more than you think, and all of a sudden everything changes.
Yeah. I mean, when you asked this question, it's the first thing that came to mind. The only thing that came to mind. I think you can pretty much categorize everything else and everything but an auction. An auction draft stands apart from anything else. I don't care the format. If it's your Dynasty format and you're doing it to kick things off with an auction draft, you've got to go through this auction. It's like a rite of passage. So difficult. And I think of the movie Rounders, play the player, not the game. It's like that's what the auction drafts are. I better know. So if I go in with a bunch of strangers, man, I might as well not.
It's almost impossible, right? Because you have no idea what they're going to do. You have to like just go on your thing, and you can't look at what anybody else is doing, where they're at, because if you get guys in Tennessee, you know who they're going to bid high on. Oh, he's a Blackhawks fan. He's going to bid high on Bedard. He's a Red Wings fan. He's going to bid high on Larkin. But then you get in a league where you don't know guys, and it's, oh man, for auction, it's awful. Because you're like, sometimes you want to bid on guys just because the value. You're like, man, this guy's way too cheap. And you bid on the value. And the other times you're like, I really want a guy. But then you get people where they get like, I don't want to just get beat by a buck. And so you just keep bidding because you want to keep driving it up because you're like, no. But then you look back. I don't know how many times I've looked back on auction leagues and been like, I should have spent like $3 more on that guy. Like, I ended up with a guy that was not even half as good for almost the same money because I got desperate and had to bid a guy up. And I was like, if I would have just bid that other guy up earlier, I would have been way better off. But man, auction, like it's such a different world doing auction, man. It's a different beast. It really is.
Yeah, I've abandoned strategy so quickly in an auction draft where we're not even out of the first round, and every note and all the research I've done, I've pitched it aside, and now I'm just living in the moment, and I'm just going straight up to chance because I don't know, have a deep enough understanding. Like you said, if you're in a home league, yeah, okay, well, JT's the parlay guy that'll put 8 parlays together. He's got there taking risks, taking big swings, whereas Toast will grind you out. He'll get those value players and he'll put a high premium on these role player type guys. Like, unless you have some of that intel, good luck. Yeah, again, at those I just say, realize what you're in it for. Don't get into a $300 league or something you can't afford, because make sure the price is right to buy into a league like that, because I think a lot of it's going to come down to real time luck. There's no better way to put it. They're very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, and let me ask you this,
Toast, back
guys.
to you. Sorry to cut you off on that, but yeah, jump back into your point here.
No, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I can finish up here. But let me ask you this question, and then let me kind of finish up some other thoughts here. Let's say Nathan McKinnon's at $61. I'm actually on a site right now where it basically has some values out there. McKinnon and Kucherov are 61, and McDavid's at 50. So would you like to have McKinnon, and let's say you got him at $61 with a roster of, let's say, 21 players, and you got $200 in your bank? Or would you actually rather have a combination of Mikko Rantanen and Philip Forsberg, and Rantanen actually being left wing, right wing, and Forsberg left wing as well, and you're getting those two players for the price you'd actually would have got McKinnon? Who do you want?
See, in an auction league, I'm probably taking the other two guys depending on how deep the league is. If it's like if like maybe it's only an 8 or 10 team league, I'm gonna bid higher on auction leagues because I want to grab the highest end players I can. But if it's a bigger league, my strategy for auction is I'm looking for values. I'm looking to spread my money out as much as I can. And when everybody else is out of money, I will keep a little extra just to get the end. So, and I wasn't even planning on saying this, but I'll throw this in there for people doing strategy. I always want to keep, if there's 7 roster spots left, I want to keep at least $15 to $20 in my bank. You know why that is? Is somebody puts somebody else up I want when everyone gets low on money, I want to be able to outbid them by $1 or $3 in order to make that work. So I've had so many leagues auction drafts where I crushed it was at the end of the draft. That's where things really got good for me, was the end of the draft. I could just outbid people that put up guys for $1, $2, $3. That's where I feel like I've won a lot of drafts. So I think sometimes it just depends on, how your league works. But I never want to be the first guy that runs out of money. I always want to have just a hair left where when good values start dropping, I can get those guys. What do you guys think?
Yes, I am back. If I'm the only one that actually left the show here, sorry guys.
Yeah, it tells you. Yeah, you drop for just a second, but you're back in.
Yeah, I think it hit me too. I thought I was the only one, so sorry about that. But I still hear I just got the tail end of that, so I'm not sure.
So I was just talking about auction draft. Big thing for me is I want to try to keep a few dollars at the end of drafts because I feel like that's where I get a lot of value. The guys that get down to where they can only minimum bid at the very end always end up getting stuck. I want to keep just enough money where I can outbid someone when everyone gets real low and everyone can only bid $1 or $2 or $3. I want to have just a hair more money so that I can actually, a guy gets put up by someone in the auction bid, I can actually outbid them by $1 or $2 to get the guy. So that's a big strategy I always try to keep at the end of auctions. For that reason, I feel like you can get a lot of good values at the end. Dose, are you back? You back?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Sorry, the connections are.
Nope, you're all right. Little bit of connection issues on our end here, but we're still rolling away here, talking about currently our draft strategies in different leagues. Right now, we're talking about the hardest format, which we all agree is auction because it can go off the rails so quickly. You never know what's going to happen and kind of where things are going to go on the auction style. Let's move on to some other styles. Aaron, kind of after auction, kind of give me like a little bit of a list of like what do you think is next hardest, a little bit easier, kind of let people know like, hey, if you want to get in a league, sometimes these easier leagues are better to start, or like if you were going to add a second league or a third league, get into those and kind of work your way up to the harder stuff, because sometimes you don't want to jump in those crazy hard ones right away because then you're like, whoa, that's more than I was prepared for.
Yeah, I would say the least complex is going to be your redraft standard scoring format. Goals, assists, goalies, all that. That's going to be by far the most basic. That's going to get your feet wet into the sport. Let's say like I've completely lost touch with Major League Baseball from a fantasy perspective. It used to be my number one go-to. Loved it. Strategy behind it.
JT, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now, Toast.
Toast, you're back in. You're back in now.
Hey, you got me?
Yep, we got you. You're back in. You're back in.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Aaron, I'm maybe ready to like drop kick this internet into the sun. So Aaron, let me ask you the question, if we can actually keep connection here for long enough for me to finish the question. I've only tried it 3 times now. Would you rather have McKinnon or a combination of Forsberg and Rantanen on your team?
It looks like Aaron called. Aaron froze up. I have a little connection issues with it. I'm gonna take both guys. I'd rather have the 2 over the 1. For me, especially in auction format, I'd rather try to spread my money out as opposed to going after all the high end guys. That's my personal strategy. Now, I've gone against that many a time, as some people have been in some leagues with me where I've been known to draft 3 of the first 5 guys put up for the auction an amount of money right away. So I've done that too. So the strategies change from year to year. But Aaron, are you taking the 2 guys for the price of 1 in an auction league?
Yes, for sure. Especially with hockey. Again, I feel like I have enough where I can grab those guys at the end of the draft, those guys that maybe aren't on everybody's radar. So I'm definitely going with the more starts I can get more out of 2. Now that said, I could just picture you, JT, like I can't remember what year the draft was, but when Dicka drafted Ricky Williams with the number 1 pick, and he just smoked the cigar.
The whole draft.
Yeah,
traded everybody for him and said we're good.
I can picture you in that role, going into your fantasy football, and just, hey, top 3 guys.
I've done that for CMC a couple times, where I'm like, I'll take CMC, Jonathan Taylor. I'm just gonna like load up right off the bat, and I'm like, I just sit back and wait for like an hour and a half because I'm waiting till I have enough money to bid on anybody else because I bought 3 of the first 5 guys. So that has definitely happened to me before.
Put in a food order, get another pitcher, just whatever. I'm here to hang now. My night is done. But no, I back to the original question. Yes, I definitely go with the 2 in that scenario. It's fun to watch McKinnon. It's fun to watch McDavid, but it's more fun to win your fantasy league.
Toast, if we got you back with us, I'm not sure if he can hear us or not. If he can, we'll have him jump on a couple of his favorite leagues or leagues that I play. I tell you what, I'll until he jumps back up. I'm in a league with him. It's called Black Aces. We're in a salary cap league, which you basically go on with the player what his real salary is and what the real NHL salary cap is. To me, outside of auction, that is probably the next most difficult league. The only thing about that's a little better than auction, you can kind of know when guys are coming up for contracts, when they're going away. You can kind of get an idea of what you think they're going to cost. So that is not as far as like right on that moment like auction is. Like you got to make decisions immediately. But it is very difficult because you got to figure out like what guys are coming up for new contracts. Who do you need to trade before they come up for new contracts? Me and Toast a couple years ago were just loaded with young talent, but we had a ton of guys that were due for like big second or third contracts. And so we knew we were going to run out of room, and we're like, hey, we're going to have to move some of these guys, even though we love them. Even though like they're great players, we're just not going to be able to afford them all. That is where Toast's expertise comes in. So if you have yourself a buddy who's good on Excel and gets in all those and can get in the sheets and start like figuring out all those numbers, Toast is great at that. So he handles that side of thing. He looks at salary cap, figures out, this guy's probably going to come up, be worth this much. Here's who we can keep. Here's who we have to get rid of. So to me, that's the next toughest one. It makes you feel more like a GM. So if you're that person like building the team and there's not just one way to build a team, those are my favorite type of leagues because it's not, oh, I got the number 1 pick, I'm going to win, or I got the 12th pick, and so I'm going to get back-to-back guys here or whatever. So it's one of those things where it's just like, it's different on the strategy, but I love how you can do a bunch of different stuff to win. Toast right now, I know we lost you for a minute here. We're talking about most difficult leagues. I said behind auction league. I think salary cap league is the next one. But if you really want to GM it up, I was talking about our Black Aces league where the real contracts, real things. I said, you're the guy with the numbers. I talk about the players I like and who we should look at, and you're the guy with the numbers. Talk a little bit because I feel like you really have a good handle on these salary cap leagues. Talk about them for someone that wants to go like the extra step. And it's like, man, I really want to do like GM. I want to really get into it where I've got to work contracts and it's not just, oh, give me McDavid and I win the league. Like I got to actually work all my guys and have a deep enough roster. I can't be super top heavy with like 4 awesome players and then no one else because I have no more cap space.
Yeah, it is a ton of prep work. A lot of fun, though, especially as you start to play year 4, 5, 6, 7 in fantasy, and you're looking for a different challenge. So what I like to do is, go team by team in my prep work and flag players that not only really have like a good AAV, like that average that contract per season, but they got good remaining term, right? They still got term on that contract, and they're really a good fit for your format as well. The shorter the term, my thought, if you're going to pick players with short term, you better actually pick players that are a little bit older that are just kind of fillers, right? They're going to be there with your club 1 to 2 years, no different than a championship team would. Example here for like a guy that I would like really target in a cap league, Sam Reinhart for Florida. He's only 29 years old, plays on a rocking offense. He's in year 2 of an 8-year, $8.625 million contract. That is a sweet ass contract for a top 15 fantasy player. Considering the cap is really high. If he were to sign that this year and not gave Florida a team friendly deal, he's probably an $11 million player. Now you got to look at the other side of the coin. Kyle Connor, last year of his contract, a 7.2 AAV. He's 20 years old. My guess he's going to get $11 million on his next contract over 8 years. What team's he going to sign with? And what team's going to be dealt to? Is he going to go back to Winnipeg or not? All of that kind of matters, but you need to go team by team and actually be like, who's the guys with the most value, and flag those players, and you have 3 or 4 players per team, and you got to target those guys. And that's the best way I could do for a cap league. But man, you got to keep a spreadsheet. You actually got to use Excel. You got to actually see who's coming out the books. Use color coordination on who's on the UFA, RFA. And that way you can project next year, I'm going to have this much cap space. So I can't really make this trade. I mean, it is a lot. You are really a professional general manager at that point.
Yeah, and I always tell people, me and Toast are co-managers of that, but Toast handles the sheets. He's in there. He's letting me know about where we're at in a room. Then we talk about who we can maybe move or trade or who we want to re-sign. But, yeah, you got to have somebody on top of that to kind of know where these guys are going to go. Have a general idea of, like, what you think they might sign for. Because if you get a guy that signs, an 8-year, $80 million contract and you're not set or, like, semi-prepared for it, you're like, I might be dropping that guy or trading him for scraps just to get him to somebody else. So those are the types of things you got to worry about. I'm telling you, if you're ready to take a next advanced step, that is the way to go. Salary cap is awesome. but you have to be prepared to stay on top of your team and know what you're doing, because it is, like Toe said, it's a lot of work. I'm in a couple football leagues that are similar to that they're salary-based leagues. I love them because there's a ton of different strategies to win, as opposed to just a lot of redraft leagues. It's, do you have these three players, any combination of them, and then you can win. So that is definitely on that one. Another thing we talked about, so we've got the two hardest, we think: auction, salary cap. Then you get your regular dynasty, and we'll kind of speed things up as we're at 45 minutes here, but we'll probably go about an hour and a half on the show. We got our regular dynasty, you got your keeper league, and your redraft. Toast, we started when we did the home league. I took it over for a couple other buddies that were ready to kind of get out of it. Originally, we were a full redraft league. We eventually adjusted to a two-person, then a three-person keeper league, and then finally made the adjustment last year to a full dynasty. Talk a little bit about the steps of making those moves in case people have been out there, they've been in a league for a couple years. You have a nice, solid group of owners who are friends or guys you know aren't going to drop the league. If they want to make that next step from like a redraft to maybe a keeper, or a keeper to a dynasty league, talk a little bit about those steps and kind of the ones we took to make the advances in our league.
Yeah, so it really comes down to your format and your scoring. You can't screw it up, because actually once you get that scoring format, and also the format of the league, basically how many teams are going to be in, how many bench players you're going to have, how many starters you're going to have, is it going to be minors or not? And then you have that inaugural draft. There's no going back, because if there's no going back unless you're going to decide at year 10 you're going to have a redraft because you're just sick and tired of it, because guys draft a certain way. They have a certain philosophy to draft. They draft based on that format, and you can't turn around the next year and actually, especially if you're going to have a keeper league, and change it. So you better get it right. And the 2 points I could actually make here, and some advice I would give individuals is A, make sure that you're making players valuable based on how many of those players in that positions you have to start for it been valuable to some degree. Okay. If you're going to make somebody actually start 2 goalies, let me just let this out of the bag to everybody. There's only 32 starting goalies in the entire league. Okay. And you may have some guys who are actually just doing I'd call timeshares and stuff. But if you're going to do that, you can't make them start 3, right? Because you make them start 3, well, there isn't that many in there. And we ran the goalie situation a couple of years ago with another league we actually had, where we decided to fix that when we started up our own league, is you can't deduct too many points for like goalie losses and also goalie shots or saves and goals allowed. Because if you do, they're going to be scoring minus points. Then you get to the point where people don't want to start goalies. And then they start just getting around your bad formatting and scoring, and they start doing things that you don't want them to do, like sitting positions, because they don't want to lose points instead of gain points. So you got to be really, really careful with how you set your format. And JT, I'll speak for all of us here because we're all in the same league here. You talk about hard formats. You got a format that we're actually in a categories league, which I believe is far more difficult. And you actually have 18 teams, and it's a dynasty league, and it's basically that is difficult, really, really difficult. And category leagues are much more difficult than head-to-head, because in order to fill out those categories and get those players that maybe really get you some good face-offs or get you some hits and blocks, you got to look for specialty players. And you really got to dig deep for specialty players. And then you got to be happy with it. Like, is a specialty player taking up a roster spot just because I got them for face-offs only, but yet they don't score, they don't hit, they don't block, they don't shoot? Is that the right way I got it? And then you throw cap on top of that, they better have a good contract. So there's just a lot to think about there. But man, when you're ready to do that, there is nothing better. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, Aaron, I was going to say, shoot it to you. Cats League, I always feel like, is another step up. I feel like if you're in a Cats League, you got to know people that know hockey. because what ends up really frustrating you if you're not a hockey person, I was in a basketball league like this years ago. It was a cats league. You have to understand that certain players are not better players, but they're better in this league. And it's very hard for people to wrap their head around that this guy is not as good of a player as that guy, but he's somehow better in this league because of the way the scoring is in the categories, which is why I always tell people, if you want to go with like, hey, who's the best player? And you want to go based on that, then play head-to-head normal scoring leagues, because it's going to make more sense. Because you're like, oh yeah, obviously Connor McDavid is going to be the top scorer. David McKinnon is going to be one of the top scorers. Those guys are going to be there. But in a categories league, you might have two studs, like Toast just said, face-offs or hits or like a goalie stat, and you keep winning just on this one or two or three like guys that half the people probably don't even know they're in the league, but you're winning every week because of them, because of the category that they're putting you over the top on. So with you, talk about your experience with category leagues and head-to-head, and is that your suggestion? What I'm saying is like, hey, if you don't know hockey really well, stick to the head-to-head because it makes more sense, especially if you're bringing in buddies who aren't big hockey fans. They'll love it once they get into it, but you got to get the same scoring format as, like, say, football, so that people understand it if they're not big into hockey, where they don't know how to differentiate all those different statistics. Correct?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you want to match a league. So again, if they've never watched a hockey game end to end, and they don't know really what to look for, just make it simple. When the crowd scores, I score. You know, when they cheer, I cheer. Whatever. Like, they're not going to ever go to a game at the Montreal Forum and cheer because they just killed off a penalty or they chipped the puck up the glass and they avoided an icing. You know that. Like, leave that to the hardcore. But yeah, if you're just getting somebody roped into the game, let's watch it, because 82 games is a lot to play. Not only for a player, but for a fantasy GM as well. So you kind of get them into that hey, you can sprinkle in some bets with that, and that's kind of how you get the hook in, and then you can get into the more. So then let's say you either, like Toast was saying, either transform to a dynasty league where, okay, now you got a fan base going, maybe they attach themselves to a team, maybe, who knows, however this, or maybe it's just strictly fantasy, because I mean, how many, when football was statistics were showing most people were tuning into football for fantasy when fantasy really blew up. Like, people weren't watching the Bears for 4 quarters. Poor team to choose there. I don't think anybody does anyway, but they we would watch the red zone as opposed to an end-to-end game, especially for the casual fans. So I treat it like that. But then you get nerds like us, like the three of us that have been in it. We've got our beaks wet. We like the game. Then you get into those category leagues, and with category leagues, and you touch on it a little bit there, JT, but I go back to my days in MLB, playing MLB fantasy. I would just get a bunch of mid relievers, guys with super low whip. They're not guys that you tune in to watch that are going to get, Otani, that's going to, hit the ball out of the park and pitch a no-hitter at the same time, but they're just going to be boring guys. So a categories league in the NHL is the guy that goes out there and takes all the draws in the defensive zone because he's winning 60% of them. Not a single person in the stands is cheering for him. You don't even know he's on the ice. You're going to bore everybody to death. But as long as, if it's a categories lead and there's 10 categories and you win every matchup 6-4, that's all you're looking for. So go ahead and take goals, take assists. I don't care. I'm not going to get a Cale Makar. I'm not going to get a Nathan McKinnon, but I'm going to get Christian Dvorak because he's out there on faceoffs, and then he gets off the ice. He does his faceoff, and then he's off the ice. I'm going to beat you in faceoffs. I'm going to beat you in turnovers. I'm going to beat you in whatever category it is you choose to do it. And all my guys are going to be low. The name's going to mean nothing to the general population, but it's going to mean something to me because I'm going to beat you every week 6-4, and I'm going to grind it out.
Yeah, Toast, you got anything to add to the categories league?
Oh yeah. Real quick, I got a question for both of you guys, and really for the listeners, but for both of you guys. Do you want this player in a categories league? a 36-year-old center. He is 0% owned. He goes undrafted. He has projected for 5 goals and 2 assists and only 54 shots on goal. Do you want him on your team?
Usually 9 times out of 10, you say no, unless you're in a category league
Hell no.
and he does one thing really good, right? Who is it?
Yep. He does one thing really, really well. It's Luke Glendening, the center, the 4th line center for Tampa Bay Lightning. I've had him for the last 3 years in my category league because not only does he get 500 faceoffs a year win, he is amongst the top 4 to 5 to 6 players in the entire NHL in faceoff win percentage. And he will get me 108, over 100 to 150 hits a season. So he helps with that too. And think about this, it was actually a cap league. He's $1 million on the cap, right? And he's old, and basically you can discard him. And you're just rounding out a roster, right? So you're like, man, I'm real good with goals and assists and shots. I got these categories covered, but I need face-off help. And I'm so strong everywhere else, I can actually take a chance on this guy as a bottom feeder. And I tell you what, in category leagues, you really gotta work the waiver wires. You have to. And that's when time on ice comes into play too, right? You want guys that are going to be those bottom feeders are going to be in there. And if they're only getting 12, 13 minutes time on ice, they got to be efficient, right? And Glendening's a guy like that. He's very efficient when he's on ice of doing what he does best. But his draft position doesn't say that. His average own position doesn't say it. But for me and my team, he works. And I need a guy like that. So he's only one of 6 centers I have on the entire team. And centers are the only guys that are actually going to get faceoffs. That comes with another thing. If you can actually find some guys that are center, right wing eligible, or center or left wing eligible, and they can get you somewhere around 100, 150 faceoff wins a year, even though they're a wing, just another valuable guy, right? So category leagues are very, very challenging. But man, we could do a whole episode just on Cat League, and we should actually do that soon here, JT. We should actually just dedicate an entire episode to that.
Yeah, Cat League to me is it's always been a hard one for me to wrap my head around. I just got a new one with you guys, Dynasty Cat League, but it's like I just always think like that guy's the best player. He should get the most points, but it doesn't matter that way in a Cats League, to be honest with you, man. It's like that one guy, I used to always lose one category by like 1 or 2, and then I win a bunch of categories by a bunch of stats, and I still would lose. So, yeah, that always kind of blew my mind. Let's jump into another thing. Kind of, this is one I think across fantasy hockey is always very divisive. Is do you prefer to wait on goalie? Do you draft one early? Do you wait until the end, or are you? Like me and Toes have been in some leagues. Are you anti-goalie all around, and you think we should axe goalies like in football when the teams are talking about axing kicker and defense? Should we axe goalies all together in some fantasy formats? Go ahead, Aaron. You give me your first dig at this. What do you think about goalies? What's your strategy? Are you taking them early? Or are you waiting? And do you think that they should just be kicked out of most fantasy leagues, or do you want to double up? You're like, no, I want 3. I want 2 starting goalies.
Yeah, no. I'm very anti-goalie. It was funny when we did our draft, JT, when it was when you were out the pod a couple weeks ago. We all of us were anti-goalie, so we didn't have. I think, well, no, Hellebuck. I take that back. Hellebuck went in the first round, but that was by mistake. We had some issue with the software there with the draft. So otherwise, I have no idea when he would have gone. When we're talking about a guy that won the Vezina, that won the Hart Trophy in the same year, maybe Carey Price was the last one to. I can't remember who the last one to do that was, but it's like a generational talent to do that. So for that guy not to go, but no, I would, the original question, what do we do with goalies? I wait on them every single time. And the main reason is because, like Toe said, there's 32 starters. Well, I think the modern day NHL is like what happened to the modern day running back. You're going to do it by committee. You're going to have more than one. You're not getting guys that are a lock for what it used to be 70 games in a year. You're not getting your Patrick Waz that maybe even start 80 games in the regular season. Those those marathon goalies, they just aren't there anymore. And these, like I said, these guys, the dimensions on the goalie, the huge frames, 6'6", 6'7", everybody's in there. They don't have to be the most limber. They are, but it's just such a rotating. The ones that stick, say top 15 that are really the clear 1A in the NHL are it's a rare breed. So everybody else is just kind of throwing it to the wall and seeing what sticks. It also takes a while to mature in the position. So there's guys that are probably in the minors right now that we're not going to hear anything about for 5-6 years. And then at that point, like they might be, let's say the guy Askarov, who will be Sharks. He was everybody. Oh, he's going to put Saros out of a job. The Nashville's this. Then Nashville traded him. Now he's in the Sharks. The Sharks didn't start him right away. Why do they start? You just be a sieve in there because they're facing so many shots. But this guy, again, if you read the scouting report, he's everything you ever want in a goalie and more. He'll second coming of Hellebuck, but he might not be 27 before he gets that starting position. You just don't know. But his name might not be in the headlines anymore. We might kind of forget about him. Then he jumps on the scene, and then he's at a 920 save percentage on a down year. So there's always somebody that comes up. There's always somebody that nobody was on nobody's radar. There's always a guy that matures. He's the right guy at the right place. He played in the AHL, whatever. He went and he's ready and he's NHL ready. We don't even know about him yet. I wait for those guys. I'll take a chance because it pays off every single time. Every single year, there's a guy or guys that comes out of nowhere, and they do well.
Toast, what do you think? Your thoughts on goalies, and then are there positions other than goalie that you're possibly fading or waiting on in a lot of your drafts? Is there a position you're like, I don't really care about that, or are you going, I don't really look at position, I'm taking best possible player? Give me your thoughts on some of those things.
Yeah, not like goalie, because goalie is so unpredictable. I hate goalies in fantasy. We all do because they're just a pain in the ass. They really, really are. But there's 3 criteria that actually I was just kind of making a list here as I was waiting to talk here about what I like in a fantasy goalie. And number 1 above all is games played per year. If they can reach that 60 games played per year, that's a great thing. That means they're not doing a timeshare. There's 82 games in a season. And if you got a guy that ends up being somewhere in the low 50s or less, that means they're sharing time with another goalie in significant time. But if you end up getting them at 60 games or above, that means they're actually starting 75% of the games played. That's a volume starter. 2, you want to make sure if they're a volume starter or not a volume starter, who do they have behind them? If the cupboard is bare, then basically that's a good thing. Then you actually want to go ahead and grab that guy, right? Because again, there's no threat from behind. It's again, I like the analogy Aaron used, the running back thing, in football, about who's going to steal the carries, or are you having a 50-50 split or whatnot. And then 3rd, you want to get a goalie that's actually on a really, really good team, because the wins are at such a premium for a goalie. They can actually mask goals allowed. And also if your league is dumb enough to actually count goalie losses and actually at a big premium, because that's just how you wreck a goalie position is big if you're going to count goalie losses, because goalies can stand on their heads and actually be unbelievably amazing and get the loss. That's stupid.
Yeah, so let's talk about we made that adjustment in our home league because of that issue where we had a bunch of people just sitting goalies at the end of the week. When you get to Saturday, Sunday, people are like not playing anyone. Like, why are you playing one? They're like, if they scored me -5, I'm going to lose this week. But if they score me 0, I have like a 75% chance of winning. And obviously, we've talked about this before, but I don't ever want to have a position where it's more advantageous to not play someone than play someone. So we basically took goalie losses from 5 points a loss to like -1 only. We made wins worth more, but I think we ended up doing like 3 points for a win, but it wasn't like 5, and so I think finding, if you are going to go with goalies in your league, and I'm not totally against goalies, but I think if you're going to go goalies, you have to figure out a correct scoring system. Because again, and I think we've done this pretty well in our league. If a guy gets a win, but he stops 10 shots. And he gives he stops 10, gives up 11 shots against, gives 10 saves, wins a 2-1 game, and the other guy loses but gives up 2 goals and faces 45 shots. Who had the better game in reality? Probably the guy that stopped 45 shots. I mean, he was getting freaking worked all day. So that's why we have put more of a premium on actually saves, less about goals against and less about losses and wins, so that you get those guys on bad teams, but they're playing out of their minds. I'd say like Gibson for Anaheim last year would have been a perfect example of a guy that was getting a ton of saves, but was getting losses every night because his team was bad. That guy shouldn't get punished and not be able to be played in fantasy because he's awesome, but the rest of his team sucks. Like, that's not his fault. So we've adjusted our scoring for that. And that would be my biggest thing. If you are going to do goalies in your league and you're a commissioner, really work through that goalie scoring system. Because if you're in a league, and we've all been there, where a win's like 5 or 10 points and a loss is like -5 or -10, and like everything else almost doesn't count, then people just don't play goalies. If you have a top 10 team, you play your goalie. If you don't, you just don't play anybody, because you're like, you can't afford to take that big of a negative loss. So I always suggest looking to that, because you can do a little bit of negative points, but man, if you're going to just crush a guy, then it kills the position altogether. Is there any position we were talking about? I kind of brought it up briefly, but is there a position, left wing, right wing, center, defense? Is there a position you're typically fading more than other positions when you're in drafts? And if you are, is it across the board, or is it in certain formats that you guys are fading those positions? Aaron, you go first.
Yeah, in terms of fading, I mean, I typically, again, we've talked about it, the scoring formats, everything, but if all things being equal, I fade defense and I fade center, outside of the tier ones in both. Tier ones, I think your best position players are your centermen, your ice time or centermen. Defense gets a lot of ice time. But outside of those top tiers, then I will fade those positions. The only reason is because there's a lot of them. There's typically two-line center, the top 2 guys, and the two centers are the most interchangeable as well. So if Edmonton needs a goal, they're going to stick Leo with McDavid. And so now your line 2 center, Leo, becomes your right wing, left wing, wherever they put him. So those guys are versatile and they'll change it. So outside of those top tier, there's just so many centermen or people that have that center eligibility. It all comes down to eligibility. The scarcity's kind of equaled out now. That left wing isn't like it used to be, that was the prime scoring spot in the NHL, left-handed shot on the left wing. Now right wings have kind of bulked up a little bit, but right wing used to be a scarcity. It's gotten a little bit better, so I'll usually focus in. I still tend to do this if the position does matter. I'll look to fill those right wing because it's all about scarcity. But yeah, usually the wingers on those redraft scoring, I'll load up on those and I'll kind of fade the other positions if we're in a league that has that format.
What about you, Toast?
Yeah, well said, Aaron. I agree with all of that. Stole a little bit of my thunder, and that's good. I'm pretty confident I was going to answer that right. But centers, fading centers, especially in those formats where you're playing the positions, because there's just too many good ones. The wings, they're not deep. So let me read off some left wings and some right wings here. Left wing, Draisaitl, Kaprizov, Brady Tkachuk, Forsberg, Connor, Jack Hughes. Right wing, Pasternak, Reinhart, Ovechkin, Kucherov, Nylander, Rantanen, Matthew Tkachuk, Tage Thompson. That is right now, I just listed off 10 to 12 wings. And after that, there's a major drop off based on just, I don't say major, but there's a drop off. That is your tier ones and your tier twos. Man, centers and your tier one, and relative to actually being as good as the wings, the right wings and the left wings, they'll go 20 deep. So you can wait on the centers. Like, how would you like to actually go ahead and just come out of the draft and go wing, 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 And the first 3 picks, not Red Wings, JT, just left wing, right wing, right? And then you come in the 4th round and you get like Joel Eriksson Ek for Minnesota, or you get a Dylan Larkin for a wing in the 4th round. I'd rather actually have one of those guys in the 4th round and just load up on the wingers that are going to dry up real quick. So our format's easy that we play in our home league. It's just forwards, right? So they're all the same, but most formats don't do it that way. And that, again, as you're starting up a new league, if you have casual hockey fans, don't do centers, left wing, and right wings. Do everybody a forward or a skater, because you're just getting the league started. People don't know what they're doing. They're not in tune to hockey, especially if they're just casual fans. But for the deepest of leagues, and actually for the most serious of fans and fantasy hockey fans, definitely the center, left wing, right wing, and that's the way you actually want to go. But man, just wait on centers, wait on goalies, and actually we can talk about defensemen if you want, JT. I mean, so when we'd actually draft those two,
yeah,
we can
I was going to
tackle
say
that
to kind of
wrap up.
I know we've gone through defensemen a little bit before. We can either go defenseman or we can talk about a little bit about favorite format, starting up a new league. Kind of what are your suggestions? I think Toast, you kind of jumped on it there, so we might as well go with it. Your suggestion: starting a new league with friends. If you got some casual fans, people like hockey, but they don't know like a ton about hockey. Your suggestion, right, is redraft. Just do forwards and defensemen. No set positions. Always a lot more forwards. Very few defensemen because it's hard to find a lot of good defensemen, right? Obviously, goalies. If you want to go goalie, fine. Probably go one. Probably just put one in that starting lineup and then kind of build from there. And then as you get people feeling comfortable with the league, then maybe go to keeper and you say, oh, wait, let's keep 2 guys or 3 guys. Our favorite, you can just keep the best players at the top. But what we always did once we got farther into it, we wanted to keep guys at the actual round you took them. So then you started to reward the managers that were keeping guys on the roster all year and drafting guys and taking chances on guys later in rounds and holding them. So then we kind of moved our way up from like, okay, everybody keeps their 3 best players to like, oh, I want the value play. I took this rookie in the 20th round, and I kept him all year last year, and he was like solid, but he's going to be like a top 5 round pick this year, and I got him in the 20th. Do you think that's a good starting point? Kind of move your way up, kind of like we did. Go to a keeper league, figure that out, and then once you feel like you got a good group, or you want to move on and join another league, then you go into like actual positions: right wing, left wing, center. From there, head to head, move on to a cat league, and then cat leagues, and then like salary cap leagues, and then you can kind of feel that progression. Am I saying that correct, guys?
Yeah, I think so. And what I'll say is, really consider using Fantrax if you're going to do a format where we had done for years, where you're going to keep the guy in the round they were originally drafted in your inaugural draft, and then after a year of keeping them, then they would slide up 2 positions. And there's 2 reasons why that's a great idea. One, you better have a commissioner who's actually good at organization. They got to keep all that straight, right? And if they can't, then it's going to be a nightmare. But if you can, that's what JT had said as far as value. You really got guys drafted late, and then you can actually have value and a value tag on them for some time. If you don't want to play in a cap league, this is the next best thing. This is a substitute for a cap league, because then that's that value. Pretend their draft status and their tag they have on them is their contract, and then it promotes trading. Because if you're like, I can only keep 2, and I'm actually loaded up with all this talent here, and I got a lot of guys that are like down in the 17th, 18th round, or just like they're top 6 or 7 or 8 round guys, then you could trade them for future draft picks and actually slide at the board and really maximize those good drafting. This doesn't go to waste where you're just letting them go. I know, so there's a lot of ways to do that. But I couldn't agree with you more, JT. I think that the best format is redraft, head-to-head, weekly. This is for new fantasy managers. Starters, just being forwards, small bench, non-positional specific, right? Not a cap league. Maybe start one goalie. Just start one goalie. Don't make the goalies all difficult, because that muddies the waters. I really like have an emphasis of 4 goals, 2 assists, that 2-to-1 ratio. And again, as we had said, don't make goalie goals allowed that much, maybe 0.5. Goalie wins maybe 4, goalie saves 2, and don't penalize them for losing a game. I mean, don't screw your league up that way. And again, be very careful as well. You don't want those leagues actually be too small. 8 players is not a whole lot. You better have a hell of a large roster. If not, you're only going to end up having like 120 players in play at any given time. It's just it makes it difficult. And then you better have it no more than 14. Right, I think 14 is the cutoff. I mean, 10 to 12 team league, that's your sweet spot. And one thing we did a couple years ago for the playoff rounds, how many times you played fantasy football and you actually get bounced in the first round because A, you don't get a bye, and then B, it's only a 1 week playoff, and your team decides to go ahead and shit the bed at the very end when you've actually only had 2 losses all year. Make sure the first and second team actually overall are actually getting first round buys, and actually make sure your playoff weeks are actually 2 rounds for or 2 weeks for each round. So that way you can really make sure that the best teams are actually rewarded, and then the cream rises to the top. Really, I mean, so that would be my suggestion for a perfect format.
Always a little reminder: end your season early, people. Do not go to the end of the regular season. If you're if you're in a goalie league, you're going to see a ton of your guys sit the last week or two, and you're going to be real upset when you dominate the league all year, and then all your guys sit because they're already locked into the playoffs. Me and Toast had that happen a couple years back in a league that we absolutely dominated the whole year. Then our whole team sat the last week of the season because they were all in the playoffs and all looking golden, and we had no one to play, and we lost in the championship with a ton of waiver wire backups. So please, I would say at least a week early, and usually 2 weeks early. Aaron, you agree with that? In the season, 2 weeks before the end of the regular season, to make sure you get full fantasy potential where everyone's still playing all their starters?
Yeah, especially starting out, like Toast just said. We learned the hard way to do that. We've probably played other sports, other fantasy sports. If this is your first year in the league, and you want to be a commissioner and you want to spread to your other friends, and maybe like other sports a little bit better than the NHL, yes, end your league earlier. Get those extra 2 weeks where the starters are starting. NHL's like everybody else. We don't want to have any injuries before really the ultimate goals right before you. And we all know playoff hockey is a different sport. It's way different than the regular season, and those guys are pretty intense. And the last thing I'll mention here real quick is if you are starting out the league, let the NHL do the work for you. And what I mean by that is they've really put a lot of money and effort into promoting stars now. They've gone to cable, so they stream all the games. You can get all the games through subscriptions you probably already own. Everybody's got Disney Plus, you get ESPN Plus. You watch almost every single game. A couple of the big cities, Chicago, they black out the home games. I hate them. I would picket in the streets when I get a chance, but minus a couple of those big idiot teams, you can get a lot of those games. TNT does an excellent broadcast. Podcasting has exploded for the NHL. Spittin' Chicklets, #1. All that stuff, let that do the work for you. Get the excitement, get the basics in your scoring system. Goals bring people out of seats. Get the goals that are on there. Give people reason to cheer. And the last thing is with the online gambling. I mean, with anybody in almost all states, you can pick up your phone and put some money, double down on the players you got. You can play, so that's how you get people invested in it. Before you know it, they start picking up names, teams, nuances, and then you slowly progress to a dynasty style, and then you get some real fun with that GM and like the Toast Clark spreadsheet when you're getting your return on investment. Then you slowly get into that world, and then the next thing you know, you're doing a podcast on it. So I would let the NHL do the work for you as far as growing the game.
Yeah. Any final thoughts for either of you guys? Just talking about draft strategy, different types of leagues, anything you like scoring wise here in the last 10 minutes as we finish up the show. I'll start with you, Toast.
Yeah, I'll mention real quick here because you're giving me a little bit of extra time here. Real fast. Really talk about like how many can't miss defensemen are out there. When do you actually want to start drafting defensemen? And I just want to mention 4 that is consistent throughout almost every format, whether it's head-to-head, categories, dynasty, keeper, redraft, cap, you name it. These 4, in my opinion, really are the can't miss ones. And then the other after that, you should wait and really look for that value, right? And really dig deep. But you can get Cale McCarr, who's a generational defenseman. We'll be talking at the very end of his career that he's one of the best of all time. You're going to get him at the end of the first round this year. And that's in 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues. Quinn Hughes, for me, I'm waiting until probably somewhere in the middle of the third to actually take him. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 30th overall. Again, depends if you actually want to go try to win a position, right? And then you got Rasmus Dahlin, and Dahlin just does everything. He scores goals. He actually puts up assists. He runs power play. He has the time on ice. He gets the hits and the blocks and even shoots a puck. And I just described the next guy we're going to talk about as well, but Rasmus Dahlin, late third, early fourth round on the churn there, around pick number 40 overall. And then Zach Werenski is basically a clone of Rasmus Dahlin as well. They're pretty much the same player, in my opinion, from a fantasy perspective. And Werenski is probably your early round 5 type of guy. If you can't get those guys, then basically I'm waiting on defensemen. I'm fading that position. But if I can get one of those guys, and man, Dahlin and Werenski, they're sneaky. You can probably they're almost going to score, and a lot of times they score more than McCarr and Hughes, especially if there's an emphasis on hits and blocks. So, but fantasy defensemen, it's tricky. It's really tricky. Sometimes you may just go ahead and wait on them, and you may say, you know what, I'm going to go in and get some bruisers like Rocco Gudis. I'm going to get him like in the 18th round because he's going to go ahead and throw up 340 hits that season. I'm just going to let hits carry him, especially if they're like 0.3 per player. And you're just like, I'm going to get some goons. I'm going to fill out that position. So it comes down to format. It actually comes down to scoring. But those are your 4 guys, in my opinion. You're really those can't miss. Everybody else that's either that's question marks or they're just not good enough.
Aaron, what about you? Any thoughts on defenseman or any other thoughts you want to finish out the show with?
Yeah, I mean, as far as defensemen, I'm going to even narrow it down more just to if you miss out on Cale McCarr, Quinn Hughes, forget it. Don't get any of them. They're worthless. But those guys are fun to watch. Those guys I love. And maybe we get a third one with Matthew Schaefer. He just signed his deal. He might start. We'll keep our eyes on that kid. But now we got to watch the stupid Islanders. But so what? Maybe this kid will be worth watching.
Yeah, I always think about defenseman is probably one you want to avoid unless you get one of the top guys. Unless you're in a bangers league, like our league, you can get some guys that are going to score through the roof for you. But the idea is not to overdraft those guys. You can look at when we've had buddies do that, right? Excuse me. They get in there and they're like, oh, I saw what this guy scored last year. And they start taking them real early. Like, oh, those guys are good to gate. It's good to take because they're gonna score you points. But like, you don't want to skip out on some scores just to get the guys that hit a lot. So finding that sweet spot, I think, is always good. Coming up on the hour and a half, we had a little technical difficulties, but we fought through. Appreciate it, guys. We'll keep everything coming to you here on Around the Ice podcast presented by Fantasy and Frames. If you got any questions, again, always feel free to comment on any of the shows. You can always send us messages on all of our extra Twitter pages. I'm at JT Orange. Toast is at Toast Clark. Aaron's at Titch, TICH 4141, Titch 4141. If you haven't yet, also on X, go to Fifth Hockey, FIF Hockey. Follow us there so you can check us out there. And then the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel and podcast channel, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go like, subscribe, leave us a comment, give us a rating. Love that. Fantasy football all day, every day. We got your stuff here on Fantasy and Frames. Wednesday nights, the big night, a bunch of shows in a row. So jump in tomorrow night, listen to all those. We've got all kinds of drafts coming to you on Thursday night. And then on Fridays, once the season starts, we'll have all kinds of gambling for you on the NFL on there. Monday nights is our college football podcast as well. So we got all kinds of things here for you on Fantasy and Frames. So go ahead, like, subscribe, follow it so that you can get all that content. We're here every Tuesday night, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time. Guys, good to see you. Getting pumped. Hockey season upon us. We got a lot more to talk about, though. It's like every time I think about we're getting so close to season, I'm like, wait, we got a lot more shows we got to do before season gets here. So if you missed any of our previous episodes, go back. We do some talk about the rookie draft, talk about some of our rookie drafts, kind of how we did it. If you're having to be in a league that hasn't done that yet, go back, listen, or watch one of those shows. We also did some previews on the East and West, kind of where we're going to get, who we expect to be good, all that. And as we get closer to season, we'll have a bunch more of our betting shows where we're talking about who we like for awards, who we like for points and goal totals, Stanley Cup, all that good stuff, over under points. We got a lot more coming to you. For Toast, for Aaron, I'm JT. Thanks for joining us here once again on Fantasy and Frames and Around the Ice. We will check you guys next time. Appreciate it.